Raijin because of how chakra depletive it is. And yet every time we've ever seen Minato, he spams it like it's nothing. On top of all of that, Minato is a perfect sage. And while it's chakra, that doesn't stop the fact that he is a perfect sage. Mind you, Jiraiya, who was an imperfect sage, was able to defeat 4 of the 6 paths of pain by himself with no prior knowledge of their abilities. And he didn't know Flying Raijin. This means that Minato trained at Mount Muabuko, which means he probably has contracts with toads. And even if he is no good at sage mode, he can just make clones who gather in the Senjutsu chakra for him. Almost an infinite supply of chakra, which once again makes sense when you consider some of the feats that Minato has pulled off, like closing the door on the Third Great Shinobi World War by killing 1,000 Iwa shinobi by himself. Unfortunately for Minato, he's fighting somebody with a similar body count to his own. But enough of the pros of Minato, let's talk about the cons. Minato, while an incredibly talented ninjutsu genius, is never essentially stated to have any kind of genjutsu resistance whatsoever. So something along the lines of being cast into Tsukiyomi would be an instant win state for Itachi. On top of this, the ability to break a Susanoo is honestly kind of an iffy topic in Naruto. I mean, we saw Tsunade destroy Madara's ribcage, and we saw Ishiki pluck Sasuke out of his completed Susanoo. We've also seen Madara block a giant Rasengan with just his Susanoo ribcage. Which leads us to the question, is Tsunade's kick actually stronger than a giant Rasengan? The problem here becomes for Minato that he may not have a jutsu technically strong enough to break Itachi's Susanoo. Considering the fact that if Naruto's giant Rasengan couldn't break Madara's ribcage, who's to say that Minato's regular Rasengan could break an almost fully formed Susanoo? But no.
I made Grandma's mac and cheese. I made sweet potato pie. I'm preparing for my...
Minato's regular Rasengan could break an almost fully formed Susanoo. But now that we're talking about the possibility of these two breaking each other, let's get into the battle itself. Now that we understand the pros and the cons of each character, figuring out who the winner should be relatively easy. The real question becomes, whose weapons counter whose weapons? I'd like to come out and say that genjutsu will not be a problem in this battle. There's quite literally no possibility that Itachi would have the ability to put Minato under genjutsu, unless, of course, Itachi was willing to use Izanami. Why? Outside of the fact that there's basically no reason that Minato would ever need to look in Itachi's eyes because he likes to attack from blind points, Minato doesn't need to fight this fight with his eyes open. What do I mean by that? Well, we know with Sage Mode, specifically those who are perfect Sage, don't need to see to sense. Things like Froggy Kumite are predicated on the fact that Sage Mode users can understand where somebody is gonna be without necessarily seeing them in that place. On top of this, Madara was able to fight against Sasuke and dodge all of his attacks after absorbing Hashirama's Senjutsu. And this wasn't just because Madara knew exactly where Sasuke was going to be swinging, it was because of the nature chakra he was absorbing through Hashirama's cells. In essence, Sage Mode kind of works like future sight hockey. By being tapped into the nature energy around you, you can sense where somebody is and where they're going to be. In essence, Sage Mode in this way kind of operates a bit like a Sharingan, giving you an extrasensory perception into the movements of others. So once again, considering the fact that Minato wouldn't need to make eye contact with Itachi and also wouldn't even need his eyes open, Tsukiyomi is off the table. And so is Izanami. Because remember, Izanami was made to counter Izanagi. And Izanagi is when people try to reject reality and change it to their own. This only worked on Kabuto because he was trying to change his reality and reject him being Kabuto and tried to become an amalgamation of a bunch of different people whose abilities he stole. Minato doesn't fit the description of somebody trying to reject reality. And thus, Izanami is out. When it comes down to these two, the difference between IQ and battle IQ between the two of them is all but negligible. They are both super geniuses who can figure out anything they need to in the circumstances of a battle. While Itachi might have a smidgen of a higher battle IQ, it's not so noticeable that it's even really worth mentioning. What it really boils down to for Itachi is his Susanoo and Amaterasu. Amaterasu is kind of a sticky spot for Itachi. While Amaterasu does basically just appear on whatever Itachi or Sasuke are looking at, there's still an inherent pseudo travel time. It's not instantaneous, and therefore it's dodgeable or blockable. We've seen Sasuke A and the A-Tails all either react to, block, and or dodge Amaterasu before. Considering the fact that Minato is faster than all three of those people by a long shot and can just teleport to anywhere where the black flames aren't, means that Itachi using Amaterasu on Minato would have to be very situational. Not to mention Amaterasu's effective range is 0 to 5 meters. And while obviously, yes, we have seen Itachi use it further when he was Edo Tensei, while he was alive, it was between 0 and 5 meters. So really, what it boils down to is Itachi Susanoo. There is literally nothing in Minato's entire arsenal that would be able to destroy Itachi Susanoo. You could make the argument because the Rasengan inherently doesn't have a chakra nature that the Yatamura wouldn't be able to react to said Rasengan, but the fact that Madara's ribcage was able to block a big ball Rasengan from Naruto implies that even if it did get through the Yatamura, it's probably not getting through the rest of the Susanoo. So what does that mean? Minato doesn't need to destroy Itachi Susanoo. We've already stated, but when it comes to a battle of stamina between these two, the difference is insurmountable. Peak power Itachi would probably be able to sustain Susanoo for Yatamura being able to deflect spiritual attacks may actually be able to deflect the Reaper Death Seal. Also, I don't consider the Reaper Death Seal a win state because they both die. But honestly, Minato running away until Itachi can't use his Susanoo anymore is kind of a cop-out answer. So the real answer becomes Minato using a well-placed seal. Multiple people can exist within a Susanoo. And while usually the way that somebody is let into a Susanoo is if they're willingly let into the Susanoo like Naruto with Sasuke. But we've seen with the power of the Kamui that Obito is able to phase through barriers, in that he can enter the Kamui dimension on one side of a barrier and then exit the Kamui dimension on the other side of the barrier. There's arguably no reason for us to assume that flying Raijin would operate any differently. All that Minato would have to do is place a myriad of different seals around and wait for Itachi to finally step on one of them, as Minato would most likely be keeping his distance in this fight because there would really be no reason for him to be pushing the offensive. Once Itachi landed on one of these seals, Minato would be able to teleport to it, effectively teleporting inside of Itachi's Susanoo. Now the real question is, would Itachi fall for something like this? Because like we stated, Itachi's battle IQ is probably higher than Minato's. And the answer is, well, in usual circumstances, probably not. The burden of offensive measures is on Itachi here. Remember, Minato is a perfect sage, and maybe has as much chakra as half of Kurama. Minato was able to fight so long he cut down 1,000 seasoned Iwa shinobi. And while obviously Itachi